All right, let's see if we can do this video before the tyrant finds and kills Leon S. Kennedy. Good luck, buddy. Okay, Resident Evil Requiem. A very good game. But I think also, after having finished it, that game might have left the series in a really tricky spot. Again, this isn't meant to be a review of Resident Evil Requiem. If you like Resident Evil games, you should play it. Requiem's got some very good bits, it's got some okay bits, and it's got some not as good bits. Check it out, see what you think about it. I liked it. This video is actually me just talking about my immediate thoughts on where we are with the Resident Evil franchise. It's spoiler free. Requiem had this pervading feeling of finality running through it. And that's not meant to be a spoiler. It's not related to anything that happens in the game. I promise you that. I'm talking more about the actual design of the game and the journey the franchise has been on. So when I was done with the game, my first thought after was, okay, that game was cool. I enjoyed that. But then my next thought was, I am not as sure about what the future of this franchise is as I was before I started playing it. And that kind of makes me a little nervous. So, quick trip down memory lane. Resident Evil 6, the Naughty Giraffe logo one, that was the last game before the franchise was reinvented. And it was also the last game to kind of have a very clear identity of that era. I didn't like that identity, but it was defined. It was the culmination of what Resident Evil became after the success of Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 6 was this epitome of schlocky, action-focused, that kind of era of Resident Evil. It was Leon Kennedy shooting a lad in the leg and then spin kicking him taken to its logical extreme. It had multiple characters and campaigns of varying quality, wall-to-wall nonsense with the story. It was the furthest thing. It was the furthest Resident Evil had strayed from its survival horror roots. And Resident Evil Naughty Giraffe didn't review that well, and it was the game, I think, that made Capcom realize that they didn't have the juice with Resident Evil anymore. So they went back to the drawing board. They came back with what was Resident Evil 7, a drastic reinvention that felt bold and contemporary, and more importantly, it dragged that series back to survival horror, which I appreciate a lot. It had all the fundamentals of Resident Evil. It's a horror game set in a house, which takes care of the resident part of it. House was filled with the dirtiest and freakiest weirdos the American South has to offer, which takes care of the evil part of it. They chucked in not enough ammo, dude constantly on your ass, doors that open slowly, put it in first person to improve the immersion, and then boom, good Resident Evil, best in years. So that game, naturally, huge success. And they followed it up with Resident Evil Remake, a remake of 2 specifically. I think that remake is so good that it's one of the best games of all time. This kind of effectively put Resident Evil, I think, on 2 parallel tracks. One track, Capcom has these immersive first-person Resident Evil games that feel modern and exciting. Other track, remakes of classics that everyone loves. They leverage nostalgia while also making meaningful improvements, so they're even better than the originals. Resident Evil trains are rolling. Capcom keeps refining them, and it's been pretty much smooth sailing, or a smooth ride since then. Then we got Village, which amped up the action and opened things up a bit more. And then Remake came along of 4 and modernized the original. And I think that game is probably as close to perfect as it could be. Maybe even the perfect game. So 8 years after that, Capcom reinvents Resident Evil. We get Requiem. And that game kind of feels like the culmination of all the games since then. But it also feels like one that kind of muddies the identity of the series again, or takes it into a precarious place. Resident Evil that we currently know after playing Requiem, it's not one thing or the other anymore. It's this chimera of old thing and new thing. And I find chimeras very triggering. In some ways, we're kind of, like I said, back to that position in the modern era of Resident Evil that we were with Resident Evil 6. Requiem's obviously a much better game than 6, so it's a nice place to be. But at the same time, once again, we've got a game that has multiple characters, multiple campaigns, and it's mashing together multiple styles of gameplay. Credit where credit is due, Capcom pulls it off in Requiem, but at the same time, game also feels like the last stop on these lines, if you get what I mean. It's like the train either pulls in here and then heads back the other way, or it picks up steam and just runs off the track, like that movie, The Boss That Couldn't Slow Down, or Resident Evil 6. This franchise, I think, is incredibly popular, maybe now more popular than ever, so there's going to be more Resident Evil games. But the question I keep coming back to is, what does Resident Evil do next? Where does it go now? What is the series' identity from this point on? The middle chunk of Requiem, I think, it was cool. Again, no spoilers. But it felt like it didn't live up to its potential and the promise of what we thought we were going to get. And it kind of hints at and kind of steps into a little bit. It felt a bit empty. It felt like it messed with the pace of the game. Like it was like from a different game that they didn't really commit to the idea of. So they kind of salvaged it and stitched it to another game. That part of the game, that idea, there's potential for them to go back there and make improvements to that. But are they going to do the same format again? Can they pull off another first and third person dual protagonist approach? Or are we like in stagnant territory for that now? I really like it when they focus on one thing or the other. First person for survival horror immersion, third person for those tense, desperate combat situations, Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 2 or 4 Remake. But to go back to that, either of them or both of them, Capcom kind of has to untangle this Requiem knot and separate those two strings of Resident Evil again, which also could end up feeling like a step back. So are they now locked into this style of game? Again, like I said, Requiem feels like the culmination of those two styles. Like this is what it has all been leading up to. It's what they were working towards. At the same time, it kind of feels like this is your point of egress. Time to get off the train. Right now, I can't say that I'm super excited at the prospect of them taking another bite at the same apple multiple years down the line, because it's going to be a little while until we get another one, and it's probably might look the same. And that's an issue for me because it's all kind of starting to feel overly familiar. And when that happens, Capcom starts ratcheting things up. History says anyway, that's what they do. They start going in the wacky and bombastic direction. They start using shock and awe, and things have a tendency to go off the rails because that's how they keep people engaged. Keep going bigger. I guess maybe they could do another first person only one and everything will be fine because it will be set somewhere new and interesting, and I'll buy in and I'm a sucker for Resident Evil all over again. And they also have a bunch of Resident Evil games that they could still remake. Code Veronica, one of them. Even Resident Evil 0 or Resident Evil 1. Again, sucker for Resident Evil. I think I'd probably be into that. Or maybe we get an entirely original third-person only entry. That is that middle chapter of Requiem. The open-world Resident Evil game that we're all dreaming of. Something between Resident Evil and Dead Rising. That sounds amazing in my head. I would love that. I don't know if that's where they're going. What I do know is that for me, it feels like Resident Evil is at this really weird crossroads where every path that I can see is very well trodden and it leads to the same familiar place. As good as Requiem is, I also left it feeling a little worried about the future. I really hope that we don't look back at Requiem and remember it as the start of another crash for the series. But again, I'm probably overthinking it. You tell me, am I overthinking it? Do you have a clear idea where this is going? I would love to know so I can go to sleep at night and not think about this stuff constantly. But anyways, thank you for watching. Really appreciate everyone who left comments on the previous two videos. If you haven't seen those videos, feel free to go back and watch them. I did one on Bluepoint and how they did something super impressive that no one else has done from the PlayStation stable. I did one on Microsoft, the change in executives and what it means, what it could mean and what it should mean. While you're there, hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't, share it. I'm enjoying doing these. Like every now and then I just have a thought that I'll write down and kind of try and elaborate on in front of a camera. It's a good way to get it out of my brain, I think. So if you're enjoying it, let me know. I'm sure I'll be back very soon. See you later. Peace. 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 Peace.